Consequences of Global Warming by Taylor Rickabus. Global warming is having serious economic consequences. For example, climate change will affect the basic elements of life for people around the world, access to water, food production, health, and the environment. Without these everyday necessities, the quality of people's lives will drastically decrease. Stated from the book The Economics of Climate Change by the Stern Review, climate change presents a unique challenge for economics. It is the greatest example of market failure we have ever seen. From climate changes causing natural disasters such as hurricanes, tornadoes, and more, it takes a major toll on many people's lives. From jobs and houses being taken away, crops being destroyed, and tons of money going to research, there's no bright side to global warming. This paper will talk about the negative aspects of how global warming affects the economy through damage of locations, loss in productivity, and the amount of money spent on research to detect global warming. Global warming has the strong power to cause a lot of harm. Climate change can intensify many things. The most common thing it intensifies is natural disasters. From tornadoes, hurricanes, and/or floods, global warming is very unpredictable. Melting glaciers and ice caps will likely cause sea levels to rise, which would make coastal flooding more severe when a storm comes ashore. In their 2001 report, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change stated that global warming should cause sea levels to rise 0.11 to 0.77 meters by the year 2100. Over the past years, global warming has changed sea levels more than ever before. Sooner or later, natural disasters like hurricanes and floods will become a normal event for our society. Having said that, economically, natural disasters will cost more money to repair than any living person's income. For most people, what matters are not the global economic impacts, but the effects on the places they live and work. Natural disasters can cause certain things like houses being destroyed, which can cause a lot of harm in the future. Starting a new life is a hard thing to do. Economically, this is not a stable thing to break through. Kristalina Georgieva, European Commissioner for Humanitarian Aid and Crisis Response, states that costs related to natural disasters have increased from $50 billion a year in the 1980s to $200 billion in the last decade, an era when the United States has weathered the impact of storms like 2005's Hurricane Katrina and 2012's Superstorm Sandy. Hurricane Katrina took a disastrous toll on many lives. The money spent on building new houses, accompanying shelters for thousands of families, and feeding them was shocking. Most people forget about the animals as well. Another big economic struggle is the harm of natural environments for animals. Things like zoos, aquariums, jungles, and even fields are being destroyed from the natural disasters. With that, the reproduction and living status of animals are destroyed, and it takes a lot of money to fix things like this. America isn't looking to bright with the economic consequences for global warming. The impact it is having on natural disasters is the worst it's ever been. A big factor to climate change is the gain and loss in productivity. With global warming, there's absolutely no positive gaining in productivity. Climate change causes decrease in the farming industry by huge amounts. From having to reduce fields, changing the harvesting, the problem of increased irrigation, and more pests, global warming does no justice. Families rely on the produce being grown year-round for their children and themselves. The differences in climates vary when global warming is super aggressive. In a study of how global warming affects crops, scientists came to the conclusion that global warming will be particularly harmful on the global agriculture, and a farming adjustment could potentially offset the negative effects of climate change on crop production. So in order to reduce the negative impact of global warming, it is necessary for agricultural scientists to develop entirely new crop varieties designed to be more productive under changed climate conditions, and for government to advise farmer on how to adjust to alternative climates in the future. There comes a huge responsibility in the farmers also. They are the main reason why the food is being produced. When climate change heightens and becomes extremely hot or cold, people are more likely to become less productive. Farmers are the driving force behind the growth of produce. The domino effect comes in play when the workers don't produce, a loss of productivity is presented. All in all, the effect of global warming has a major relationship with a loss in productivity. A decrease in global warming would cause the production of crops to rise, due to a schedule they follow on climate change. Then following that, families won't be able to sell their crops, which puts them behind in their monthly payments. Then families won't be able to buy the crops due to the climate changes. With the major climate changes, they don't have enough resources to predict the changes. Over the years, scientists and researchers have been trying to stop the problem of global warming. Federal money shouldn't be going towards research in climate changes. It should be going towards more important things like education and getting our country out of debt. The spending is getting out of control. For example, according to the GAO, annual federal climate spending has increased from $4.6 billion in 2003 to $8.8 billion in 2010, amounting to $106.7 billion over that period. Year after year, the costs are going to keep skyrocketing if changes aren't made. From the Growth of Climate Change Society, a scientometric study, the estimate of global spending on climate change research presented above is similar to the sum of US $3.0 billion. The alarming costs are predicted to not be slowing down anytime soon. Some of the billions of dollars is making a positive change to our environment, but in a whole, the U.S. is spending too much. The four things that they are putting our money to is technology to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, science to understand climate changes, international assistance for developing countries, and wildlife adaptation to respond to actual or expected changes. The money spent is to try to get our country to be more green as a whole. It will solve the problem of certain things like having the resources to detect climate changes and preventing natural disasters and the loss of productivity. Overall, global warming is causing the U.S. to spend tax money on things that we shouldn't be spending money on. Economically, the U.S. has many consequences for global warming. Climate change is a very expensive thing to fix and measure. The amount of money the government spends is astonishing. It takes a big toll on certain people's lives for having it intensify natural disasters and ruining people's future. From having loss in productivity and lastly, the money spent on research trying to get global warming in control, there's no way for it to be a cheap expenditure. There are very few positives in global warming, and as a society, researchers need a less expensive way to fix things. One of the only positives presented on my graphs, Canada and Russia's population density is low, even though they have large land areas. The government needs to have a serious reality check in the way that they are trying to fix global warming. The annual funds spent on climate change don't have a positive future. There will forever be economic consequences in global warming.